His Last Bow. An Epilogue of Sherlock Holmes. It was 9 o'clock at night upon the 2nd of August, the most terrible August in the history of the world. One might have thought already that God's curse hung heavy over a degenerate world, for there was an awesome hush and a feeling of vague expectancy in the sultry and stagnant air. The sun had long set, but one blood-red gash was like an open wound, lay low in the distant west. Above, the stars were shining brightly, and below, the lights of the shipping glimmering in the bay. The two famous Germans stood beside the stone parapet of the garden walk, with a long, low, heavily gobbled house behind them, and they looked down upon the broad sweep of the beach at the foot of the great chalk cliff on which von Bork, with some wandering eagle, had perched himself 4 years before. They stood with their heads close together, talking in a low, confidential tones. From below, the two glowing ends of their cigars might have been smoldering eyes of some malignant fiend looking down from the darkness. A remarkable man, this Van Bork, a man who could hardly be matched among all the devoted agents of the Kaiser. It was his talents which had first recommended him for the English mission, the most important mission of all, but since he had taken it over, those talents had become more and more manifest to the half-dozen people in the world who were really in touch with the truth. One of these was his present companion, Baron von Herling, the chief secretary of his legation, whose huge 100-horsepower Benz car was blocking the country lane as it waited to waft its owner back to London. As far as I can judge the trend of events, you will probably be back in Berlin within a week, the secretary was saying. When you get there, my dear von Bork, I think you will be surprised at the welcome you will receive. I happen to know what is thought in the highest quarters of your work in this country. He was a huge man, the secretary, deep, broad, and tall, with a slow, heavy fashion of speech which has been the main asset of his political career. Von Bork laughed. They're not very hard to deceive, he remarked. A more docile, simple folk could not be imagined. I don't know about that, said the other thoughtfully. They have strange limits, and one must learn to observe them. It is that surface simplicity of theirs which makes a trap for the stranger. One's first impression is that they are entirely soft. Then one comes suddenly upon something very hard, and you know that you have reached the limit, and must adapt yourself to the fact. They have, for example, their insular conventions which simply must be observed. Meaning good form and that sort of thing, Von Bork sighed, as one who had suffered much. Meaning British prejudice in all its queer manifestations. As an example, I may quote one of our own worst blunders. I can afford to talk of my blunders, for you know my work well enough to be aware of my successes. It was on my first arrival. I was invited to a weekend gathering at a country house of a cabinet minister. The conversation was amazingly indiscreet. Van Bork nodded. I've been there, he said dryly. Exactly. Well, I naturally sent a resume of the information to Berlin. Unfortunately, our good Chancellor is a little heavy-handed in these matters, and he transmitted a remark which showed that he is aware of what has been said. This, of course, took the trail straight to me. You've no idea the harm that it did me. There was nothing soft about our British host on that occasion, I assure you. I was 12 years living it down, and now you, with this sporting pose of yours. Oh, no, don't call it a pose. A pose is an artificial thing. This is quite natural. I'm a born sportsman, and I enjoy it. Well, that makes it more effective. You yacht against them. You hunt with them. You play polo. You match them in every game. Your four-in-hand takes a prize at the Olympia. I have even heard that you go to the length of boxing with the young officers. What is the result? Nobody takes you seriously. You are a good old sport. A quite decent fellow for a German. Hard-drinking, nightclub, knockabout town, devil-may-care young fellow. All the time this quiet country house of yours is the center of half the mischief in England, and the sporting squire, the most astute Secret Service man in Europe. Genius, my dear von Bork, genius. You flatter me, Baron, but certainly I may claim that my 4 years in this country have not been unproductive. I have never shown you that little store. Would you mind stepping in for a moment? The door of the study opened straight on the terrace. Von Bork pushed it back and, leading the way, he clicked a switch of an electric light. He then closed the door behind the bulky form which followed him. He carefully adjusted the heavy curtain over the latticed window. Only when these precautions had been taken and tested did he turn his sunburned aquiline face to his guest. "Some of my papers have gone," said he. "When my wife and household left yesterday for Flushing, they took the less important with them. I must, of course, claim the protection of the embassy for the others. Your name has already been filed as one of the personal suite. There will be no difficulties for you or your baggage. Of course, it is just possible that we may have not to go with you. England may leave France to her fate. We are sure that there is no binding treaty between them. And Belgium, too? Yes, and Belgium, too." Von Bork shook his head. "I can't see how that could be. There's a definite treaty there. She could never recover from such a humiliation." "She would at least have peace for the moment. But her honor—" "Tut, my dear sir, we live in an egalitarian age. Honor is a medieval conception. Besides, England is not ready. It is an inconceivable thing, and even our special war tax of 50 million, which one would think made our purpose as clear as if we had advertised it on the front page of the Times, has not roused these people from their slumbers." Here and there one hears a question. It is my business to find an answer. Here and there is also an irritation. It is my business to soothe it. But I can assure you that so far as the essentials go, the storage of munitions, the preparation for submarine attack, the arrangements for making high explosives, nothing is prepared. How then can England come in, especially when we have stirred her up with such a devil's brew of Irish civil war, window-breaking furies, and God knows what to keep her thoughts at home? She must think of her future. That is another matter. I fancy that in the future we have our very own definite plans about England, and that your information will be very vital to us. It is today or tomorrow with Mr. John Bull. If he prefers today, we are perfectly ready. If it is tomorrow, we shall be more ready still. I should think they would be wiser to fight the Allies than without them. But that is their own affair. This week is their week of destiny. But you are speaking of your papers." He sat in an armchair with the light shining upon his broad, bald head, while he puffed sedately at his cigar. The oak-paneled, book-lined room had a curtain hung in the further corner. When this was drawn, it disclosed a large brass-bound safe. Von Bork detached a small key from his watch chain, and after some considerable manipulation of the lock, he swung open the heavy door. "Look," he said, standing clear with a wave of his hand. The light shone vividly into the open safe, and the secrecy of the embassy gazed with absorbed interest at the rows of stuffed pigeonholes with which it was furnished. Each pigeonhole had a label, and his eyes, as he glanced along them, read a long series of titles such as Fords, Harbor Defenses, Aeroplanes, Ireland, Egypt, Portsmouth Forts, the Channel, Rosyth, and a score of others. Each compartment was bristling with papers and plans. "Colossal," said the secretary, putting down his cigar as he softly clapped his fat hands. "In all 4 years, Baron, not such a bad show for the hard-drinking, hard-riding country squire. And the gem of my collection is coming, and there is all the setting and getting ready for. He pointed to a small space over naval signals was printed. But you have a good dossier there already. Out of date and waste paper, the Admiralty in some way got the alarm, and every code has been changed. It was a blow, Baron. The worst setback in my whole campaign. But thanks to my checkbook and a good aliment, all will be well tonight. The Baron looked at his watch and gave a guttural exclamation of disappointment. Well, I can really wait no longer. You can imagine that things are moving at present in Carlton Terrace, and that we have all to be at our posts. I had hoped to be able to bring news of your greatest coup. Did Altamont name no hour? Von Borg pushed over a telegram. We will come without fail tonight and bring you sparkling plugs. Altamont. Sparkling plugs, eh? See, he poses as a motor expert, and I keep a full garage. In our code, everything likely to come up is named after some spare part. If he talks about a radiator, it is a battleship. Of an oil pump, a cruiser, and so on. Spark plugs are naval signals. From Portsmouth at midday, said the secretary, examining the superscription. By the way, what do you give him? £500 for his particular job. Of course, he has a salary as well. The greedy rogue. They are useful, these traitors, but I grudge them their blood money. I grudge Altamont nothing. He's a wonderful worker, and if I pay him well, at least he delivers the goods, to use his own phrase. Besides, he is not a traitor. I assure you that our most pan-Germanic junker is sucking dove in his feelings towards England, as compared to a real bitter Irish-American. Oh, an Irish-American? If you heard him talk, you would not doubt it. Sometimes I assure you that I can hardly understand him. He seems to have declared war on the King's English as well as on the English King. Must you really go? He may be here any moment. No, I'm sorry, but I am already overstayed my time. We shall expect you early tomorrow, and when you get that signal book through the little door of the Duke of York steps, you can put a triumphant fine on your record in England. What, today? He indicated a heavy, sealed, dust-covered bottle, which stood with two high glasses upon the salver. May I offer you a glass before your journey? No thanks, but it looks like revelry. Altamont has a taste in some wines. He took a fancy to my Tokay. He's a touchy fellow and needs humoring in small things. I have to study him, I assure you. Then strolled out on the terrace again, and along it on the further end, where at a touch from the Baron's chauffeur, the great car shivered and shuckled. Those are the lights of Harwich, I suppose, said the secretary, pulling on his dust coat. How still and peaceful it all seems. There may be other lights within the week, and the English coast a less tranquil place. The heavens, too, may not be quite so peaceful if all the good Zeppelin promises us comes true. By the way, who is that? Only one window showed a light behind them. In it there stood a lamp, and beside it, seated at a table, was a dear old ruddy-faced woman with a country cap. She was bending over knitting and stooping occasionally to stroke a large black cat upon the stool beside her. Oh, that is Martha, the only servant I have left. The secretary chuckled. She might almost personify Britannia, said he, with her complete self-absorption and general air of comfortable sonance. Well, au revoir, Von Borg. With a final wave of his hand, he sprang into the car, and a moment later the two golden cones from the headlights shot forward in the darkness. The secretary lay back in the cushions of his luxurious limousine, with his thoughts so full of impending European tragedy that he hardly observed that his car swung round the village street. It nearly passed over a little Ford coming in the opposite direction. Von Borg walked slowly back to the study when the last gleams of the motor lamps had faded in the distance. As he passed, he observed that his old housekeeper had put out the lamp and retired. It was a new experience for him, the silence and darkness of his widespread house, for his family and household had been a large one. It was a small relief to him, however, to think that they were all in safety and that, but for the old one woman who had lingered in the kitchen, he had the whole place to himself. There was a good deal of tidying up to do inside his study, and he set himself to it, until his keen, handsome face was flushed with the heat of the burning papers. A leather valise stood beside him at the table, and into this he began to pack very neatly and systematically the precious contents of his safe. He had hardly got started with the work, however, when his quick ears caught the sound of a distant car. Instantly he gave an exclamation of satisfaction, strapped up the valise, shut the safe, locked it, and hurried out on the terrace. He was just in time to see the lights of the small car come to a halt at the gate. The passenger sprang out of it and advanced swiftly towards him, while the chauffeur, a heavily built elderly man with a grey mustache, settled down, who one resigns himself to a long vigil. "Well," asked Van Borg eagerly, running forward to meet our visitor. The answer of the man waved a small brown paper parcel triumphantly over his head. "You can give me the glad hand tonight, mister," he cried. "I'll bring you home the bacon at last." "The signals? The same as I said in my cable, every last one of them. Semaphore, lamp code, Marconi, a copy, mind you, not the original. And that was too dangerous. But it's real goods, and you can lay a hand on that." He slapped the German on the shoulder with a rough familiarity from which the other winced. "Come in," he said. "I'm all alone in the house. I was only waiting for this. Of course, a copy is better than the original. If the original were missing, they could change the whole thing. You think it's safe to about the copy?" The Irish-American had entered the study and stretched his long limbs on the armchair. He was a tall, gaunt man of 60, with clear-cut features and a small goatee beard which gave him the general resemblance of the caricatures of Uncle Sam. A half-smoked, sodden cigar hung from the corner of his mouth, and as he sat down he struck a match and relit it. "Making ready for the move?" he asked as he looked around him. "Say, mister," he added, as his eyes fell upon the safe from which the curtains were now removed. "You don't tell me to keep the papers in that?" "Why not?" "Gosh, in a wide-open contraption like that? And they reckon you to be some spy. Why, a Yankee crook would be into that with a can-opener. If I'd known any better, a letter of mine was going to lie loose like a thing like that, I would have been a mug to write you at all." "It would puzzle my cook to force a safe," Von Bork answered. "You won't cut the metal with any tool." "But the lock?" "No, it's a double combination lock. You know what that is." "Search me," said the American. "Well, you need a word as well as a set of figures before you can get the lock to work." He rose and showed a double radiating disc round the keyhole. "The outer one is for letters, the inner one is for figures." Well, that is fine. So it's not quite as example or simple as you thought. It was 4 years ago that I had it made. And what do you think I chose word and figures?" "It's beyond me." "Well, I chose August for the word and 1914 for the figures. And here we are." The American's face showed his surprise and admiration. "Why, that was smart. I had it down to a fine thing. Yes, a few of us even then could guess the date. There it is, and I'm shutting down tomorrow morning." "Well, I guess you'll fix me up also, then. I'm not staying for this Goddard country all on my lonesome. In a week or less, and from what I see, John Bull will be on his hind legs and fair ramping. I'd rather watch him from over the water." "But you're an American citizen." "So was Jack James an American citizen, and he's doing time in Portland all the same. It cuts no ice with a British copper to tell him you're an American citizen. 'It's British law over here,' says he. By the way, mister, talking of Jack James, it seems to me that you don't do much to cover your men." "What do you mean?" Van Borg asked abruptly. "Well, you are the employer, ain't you? It's up to you to see that they don't fall down. But they do fall down, and when do you ever pick them up? There's James. It was James's own fault. You know that yourself. He was too self-willed for the job. James was a bonehead, I give you that. Then there was Hollis. The man was mad. Well, he went a bit woozy towards the end. That's enough to make a man bug out if he used to play a part of morning, night, and day with 100 guys all ready to set the coppers wise to him. But you know, there's Steiner. Van Bork started violently. His ruddy face turned a shade paler. What about Steiner? Well, they've got him now, that's all. They raided the store last night, and he and his papers are all in Portsmouth Gaol. You'll go off, and he, poor devil, will have to stand the racket, and only lucky if he gets off with his life. That's why I want to get over the water as soon as I can. Van Bork was a strong, self-contained man, but it was easy to see that the news had shaken him. How could they have got on to Steiner, he muttered. What's the worst blown at? Well, you nearly had it worse off, for I believe they're not far from me. Don't you say that. Sure thing. My landlady over Fratton Way had some inquiries, and when I heard of it, I guessed it was time for me to hustle. But what I want to know is, mister, how the coppers know these things. Steiner is the 5th man you've lost since I signed on with you, and I know the name of the 6th if I don't get a move on. How do you explain it? Ain't you ashamed of seeing your men go down like this? Van Bork flushed crimson. How dare you speak to me in such a way? I don't dare things, mister. I wouldn't be in your service. But I'll set you straight what is on my mind. I heard that you, with German politicians, when an agent has done his work, you're not so sorry to see him put away. Bork sprang to his feet. Do you dare to suggest that I have given away my own agents? I don't stand for that, mister, but there's a stool pigeon across somewhere, and it's up to you to find out where it is. Anyhow, I'm taking no more chances. It's me for Little Holland, and the sooner the better. Van Bork had mastered his anger. We've been allies too long to quarrel now at the very hour of victory, said he. You've done splendid work and taken risks, and I can't forget it. By all means go to Holland, and you can get a boat for Rotterdam to New York. No other time will be safe for a week from now. I'll take that book and package it with the rest. The American held a small parcel in his hand, but made no motion to give it up. What about the dough? He asked. The what? The boodle, the reward, the £500. The gunner turned damn nasty at the last, and I had to square with him an extra $100, or it would be too nitpicky for me and you. Nothing doing, he says. Meant it too, but the last 100 did it. It cost me £200 from first to last, so it is likely I'll give it up without getting my wad. Van Bork smiled with some bitterness. You don't seem to have a very high opinion of my honor, he said. You want the money before you give me the book? Well, mister, it is a business proposition. All right, have your way. He sat down at the table and scribbled a check, which he tore from the book, but he refrained from handing it to his companion. After all, since we're on such terms, Mr. Allamont, he said, I don't see why I should trust you any more than you trust me. Do you understand? He added, looking back over his shoulder at the American. There's a check upon the table. I claim the right to examine the part. It is a good wine, Holmes. A remarkable wine, Watson. Our friend upon the sofa has assured me that it's from Franz Joseph's special cellar of the Storyteller Palace. Might I trouble you to open the window? The chloroform vapor does not help the palate. The safe was ajar, and Holmes, standing in front of it, was removing dossier after dossier, swiftly examining each and then packing it neatly in Von Bork's valise. The German lay upon the sofa, sleeping stereously, with a strap round his upper arms and another around his legs. We need not hurry ourselves, Watson. We are safe from interruption. Would you mind touching the bell? There is no one in the house except old Martha, who has played her part to admiration. I got to the situation here when I first took the matter up. Ah, Martha, you'll be glad to hear all is well. The pleasant old lady had appeared in the doorway. She curtsied with a smile to Mr. Holmes, but glanced up with some apprehension at the figure upon the sofa. It's all right, Martha. He has not been hurt at all.
I'm glad of that, Mr. Holmes. According to his flights, he has been a kind master, and he wanted me to go with his wife to Germany yesterday, but that would hardly have suited our plans, would it, sir?
No, indeed, Martha. So long as you were here, I was easy in mind. I waited some time for your signal tonight.
It was the secretary, sir.
I know. His car passed ours.
I thought he would never go. I knew that it would not suit your plans, sir, to find him here.
No, indeed. Well, it was only meant that we waited half an hour or so until I saw your lamp go out, and knew that the coast was clear. You can report to me tomorrow in London, Martha, at Claridge's Hotel.
Very good, sir.
I suppose you have everything ready to leave?
Yes, sir. He posted 7 letters today. I have the addresses as usual.
Very good, Martha. I will look to you tomorrow, then. Good night. These papers, he continued as the old lady vanished, are not of very great importance for information. The general they represent has been sent long off to the German government. And these are the originals, which could not safely be got out of the country. Then they are of no use to us. I should go so far to say that, Watson. They will at least show our people what is known and what is not. I may say that a good many of these papers have come through me, and I may not need to add thoroughly unworthy. It would brighten my declining years to see a German cruiser navigating Solent according to the minefield plans which I have finished. But you, Watson, he stopped his work and took his old friend by the shoulders. I've hardly seen you in the light yet. How many years have I used you? Look at the blithe boy as ever. I feel as 20 years younger, Holmes. I've seldom felt that how happy as I got your wire asking me to meet you at Harwich with the car. But you, Holmes, you've changed very little, save for your horrible goatee. These are the sacrifices one makes for their country, Watson, said Holmes, pulled a little chuffed. Tomorrow it will be a dreadful memory. With my haircut and a few other superficial changes, I shall no doubt reappear as Claridge's tomorrow as I was before this American stunt. I beg your pardon, Watson. My well of English seems to be permanently defiled. Before this American job came my way. But you retired, Holmes. We heard you were living as a life of a hermit among your bees and your books in a small farm upon the South Downs. Exactly, Watson. Here's the fruit of my leisure days. My magnum opus of my later years. He picked up the volume from the table and read the title aloud. Practical Handbook of Bee Culture, with some observations upon the surrogation of the queen. Alone I did it. Behold the fruit of the pensive nights and laborious days when I watched the little working gangs once watched the criminal world of London. But how did you get to work again? I have often marveled at it myself. The foreign minister alone I could not have withstood, but when the premier also deigned to visit my humble roof. The fact is, Watson, that this gentleman upon the sofa was a bit too good of our people. He was in a class by himself. Things were going wrong, and no one could understand why they were going wrong. Agents were suspected or even caught, but there was evidence of some strong and secret central force. It was absolutely necessary to expose it. A strong pressure was brought upon me to look into the matter. It has cost me 2 years, Watson, and they have not been devoid of excitement. When I say that I started a pilgrimage in Chicago, graduated as an Irish secret society in Buffalo, and gave serious trouble to a constabulary in Skidderbean, and eventually caught the eye of a subordinate agent of Von Bork, who recommended me as a likely man, you'll realize that the matter was complex. And since I have been honored by his confidence, which was not prevented most of his plans going subtly wrong and 5 of his best agents being in prison, I watched them, Watson, and I picked them as they ripened. Well, sir, I hope that you are none the worse. The last remark was addressed to Von Bork himself, who was, after much gasping and blinking, had lain quietly listening to Holmes's statements. He broke out now into a furious stream of German invective, and the face convulsed with passion. Holmes continued his swift investigation of documents while his prisoner cursed and swore. Although unmusical, German is one of the most expressive of all languages, he observed when Bork had stopped from pure exaltation. Hello, hello, he added, as he looked hard at the corner of the tracing before putting it in a box. This should put another bird in a cage. I had no idea that the paymaster was such a rascal, though I have long had an eye upon him. Master Van Bork, you have done a great deal for answering. The prisoner had raised himself with some difficulty upon the sofa and was staring with a strange mixture of amazement and hatred at his captor. I shall get level with you, Altamont, he said, speaking with slow deliberation. If it takes all my life, I shall get level with you. Ah, the sweet old song, said Holmes. How often I have heard it in days gone by. It was my favourite ditty of the late lamented Professor Moriarty. Colonel Sebastian Morin has also been known to warble it, and yet I live and keep bees upon South Downs. Curse you, double traitor! Cried the German, straining against his bonds and glaring murder with his furious eyes. No, it is not as bad as that, said Holmes, smiling. As my speech surely shows you, Mr. Altamont of Chicago had no existence. In fact, I used him, and he is gone. Then who are you? It is really immaterial who I am, but since the matter seems to interest you, Mr. Von Bork, I may say that this is not my first acquaintance with members of your family. I have done a good deal of business in Germany in the past, and my name is probably familiar to you. I wish to know it, said the Russian primly. It was I who brought the separation between Irene Adler and the late King of Bohemia, when your cousin Heinrich was the imperial envoy. It was I who saved from murder by the nihilist Klopman Count von und zu Grafense, who was your mother's elder brother. It was I... Von Bork sat up in amazement. There is only one man, he cried. Exactly, said Holmes. Von Bork groaned and sank back on the sofa. And most of the information came through you, he cried. What was it worth? What have I done? Is it the ruin of my career? It is certainly a little untrustworthy, said Holmes. It will require some checking, and you have little time to check it. Your admiral may find the new guns rather larger than he expects, and the cruisers perhaps a trifle faster. Von Bork clutched at his own throat in despair. They will do no good in the other points of detail, which no doubt will come to light in time. But you have one quality which is very rare in German, Mr. Von Bork. You are a sportsman, and you bear me no ill will when you realize that you, who have outwitted so many other people, have at least been outwitted yourself. After all, you have done your best with your country, and I have done my best for mine, and what could be more natural? Besides, he added, not unkindly, as he laid his hand upon the shoulder of the prostrate man, it is better to fall before some more ignoble foe. These papers are now ready, Watson. If you will help me with our prisoner, I think that we may get started for London at once. It was no easy task to move Von Bork, for he was a strong and desperate man. Finally, holding either arm, the two friends walked him very slowly down the garden walk, which he had trod with such proud confidence when he received the congratulations of the famous diplomatist only a few hours before. After a short final struggle, he was hoisted, still bound hand and foot, into the spare seat of the little car. His precious valise was wedged in beside him. I trust that you are comfortable as circumstances permit, said Holmes, when the final arrangements were made. Should I be guilty of a liberty if I lit a cigar and placed it between your lips? But all amenities were wasted upon the angry German. I suppose you realize, Mr. Sherlock Holmes, said he, that if your government bears out, the usual treatment comes as an act of war. What about your government and all its treatment? Said Holmes, tapping the valise. You are a private individual. You are not warrant for my arrest. The whole proceeding is absolutely legal and outrageous. Absolutely, said Holmes. Kidnapping is a German subject. And stealing his private papers? Well, you know your position. You and your accomplice here. If I were to shout out for help, we will pass through the village. My dear sir, if you did anything so foolish, you would probably enlarge the too limited titles of our village inns by giving us the darling Prussian as a signpost. The Englishman is a patient creature, but at present his temper is so little inflamed that it would not well to try him too far. Now, Mr. von Bork, you will go with us in the quiet, sensible fashion to Scotland Yard. Once you can send for your friend Baron von Herling, and see if even now you may not fill that place which he has reserved for you in the ambassadorial suite. As for you, Watson, are you joining up with your old service? I understand, so London won't be out of your way. Stand with me here upon the terrace if you may be a little quiet, that we may talk things over. The two friends chatted in intimate converse for a few minutes, recalling once again the days of the past, whilst the prisoner vainly wriggled to undo his bonds that held him. As they turned to the car, Holmes pointed at the little moonlight sea and shook a thoughtful head. That's the east wind coming, Watson. I think not, Holmes. It is very warm. Good old Watson. You're the one fixed point in a changing age. There's an east wind coming all the same. Such a wind never blew on England yet. It will be bitter and cold, Watson, and a good many of us may wither before the blast. But it's God's own wind nonetheless, and a cleaner, better, stronger land will lie in the sunshine when the storm has cleared. Start her up, Watson, for it's time that we're on our way. I have a cheque for £500, which should be cashed early, for the drawer is quite capable of stopping it. If he can.